Are you saying that the banking industry trumps the president, the Congress, and the American government when it comes to this issue so crucial to the survival of American democracy?
I don't know. I hope they don't trump it, but the signs that I see this week, the body language, the words, the op-eds, the testimony, the way they're treated by certain congressional committees, it makes me feel very, very worried. I have this feeling in my stomach that I felt in other countries, much poorer countries, countries that were heading into really difficult economic situations, when there's a small group of people who got you into a disaster and who are still powerful. The disaster may even have made them more powerful, and you know you need to come in and break that power, and you can't. You're stuck.
Both the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times reported this week that Obama's top two political aides, Rahm Emanuel and David Axelrod, have pushed for tougher action against the banks, but they didn't prevail. Obama apparently sided with Geithner in the Treasury Department in using a velvet glove.
What I read from that is that there's an unnecessary and excessive deference to the experts, or the supposed experts. And I think the view that a lot of people have in Washington, I live in Washington, I follow this very closely, the view is that you need to rely on the technocrats. And the technocrats saying this is the way to go, and you mustn't be too tough on the banks because that will have adverse consequences for credit and for the economy and for unemployment and so on and so forth. Those technocrats, if that's what they're saying, are wrong. That is not the right way to deal with this crisis. There are many fine professionals at Treasury with great experience who've spent their lives working on important issues related to the United States. What we face right now is not a typical U.S. issue. We face a crisis, and the President said this on Monday night. The President Obama said, we've never seen anything like this since the Great Depression. Therefore, nobody working now, has any first-hand experience. And he also said we may face what he called a lost decade. We've never seen that anywhere other than in Japan in the 1990s, right? It's something for Treasury officials to really understand and to really understand the alternatives. Then they're not, I mean, with all due respect to them, they're not the ultimate authority. I don't think they're the right people. The correct people you should be asking this question to are people at the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. And I can tell you that what they're saying is that the policy that we seem to be pursuing of being nice to the banks is a mistake. The powerful people are the insiders. They're the CEOs of these banks. They're people who run these banks. They're the people who paid themselves the massive bonuses at the end of last year. Now, those bonuses are not the essence of the problem, but they are a symptom of an arrogance and a feeling of invincibility that tells you a lot about the culture of those organizations and the attitudes of the people who lead them.
Geithner is hired as his chief of staff, the lobbyist from Goldman Sachs. The new Deputy Secretary of State was until last year a CFO of Citigroup. Another CFO of Citigroup is now assistant to the president and deputy national security advisor for international economic affairs. And one of his deputies also came from Citigroup. One new member of the president's Economic Recovery Advisory Board comes from UBS, which is being investigated for helping rich clients evade taxes. You're probably too young to remember that old song, sounds like Mac the Knife is back in town. I mean, is that what you're talking about with this web of relationships?
Absolutely. I don't think you have enough time on your show to go through the full list of people and all the positions they've taken. I'm sure these are good people, don't get me wrong. And these are fine, upstanding citizens who have a certain perspective and a certain kind of interest and who see the world a certain way. And exactly a web of interest, I think, is what you said. And that's exactly the right way to think about it. That web of interest is not my interest or your interest or the interest of the taxpayer. It's the interest, first and foremost, of the financial industry in this country.
Do you think that Obama understands how these guys play the game? Let me play you the recording of a conference call Huffington Post released this week. One of the top officials of Morgan Stanley is speaking to his colleagues. Here it is.
I'm going to turn to a topic that I suspect is near and dear to everybody's hearts, which is retention. There will be a retention award. Please do not call it a bonus. It is not a bonus. It is an award. The award will be based on 08 full-year production. Clearly would have been cheaper to have done it off 09, but we think it's the right thing to do, and we've made that decision.
What he's basically saying is business as usual. Go about your daily lives, get the bonuses. You may rebrand them as awards, but it really shows you the arrogance, and I think these people think that they've won. They think it's over. They think it's won. They think that we're going to pay out 10 or 20% of GDP to basically make them whole. It's astonishing.
Why wouldn't they believe that? I mean, when I watched the 8 CEOs testify before Congress, the House Financial Services Committee earlier this week, I had just finished reading a report that almost every member of that committee had received contributions from those banks last year. I mean, in a way, that's like paying the cop on the beat not to arrest you, right?
I called up one of my friends on Capitol Hill after that testimony and that session. I said, what happened? This was your moment. Why did they pull their punches like that? And my friend said, the committee members, know the bankers too well.
Last year, the securities and investment industry made $146 million in campaign contributions. Commercial banks, another $34 million. I mean, American taxpayers don't have a flea's chance on a dog like that, do they?
It's a massive problem, obviously. And I do think, though, the good news is there are people in the White House. I think the president himself is aware of this broader issue. And obviously the campaign, the Obama campaign, was very good at getting small contributions and trying to minimize the impact of major donors like that. But at the same time, these people are throughout the system of government. They are very much at the forefront of the Treasury. The Treasury is apparently calling the shots on their economic policies. This is a decisive moment. Either you break the power or we're stuck for a long time with this arrangement.
When Tim Geithner said earlier in the week that the American people have lost faith in some financial institutions and the government, did it occur to you that this was the same man who was president of the New York Fed through much of this debacle?
I have no problem with poachers turning gamekeeper, right? So if you know where the bodies are buried, maybe you can help us sort out the problem. And I did think the first 3 or 4 minutes of what Mr. Geithner said were very good as a definition of the problem and pointing the finger clearly at the bankers and saying that the government had been slow to react, and of course that included himself. I liked that. And then he started to talk about the specifics, and he said the compensation caps we've put in place for the executives of these banks are strong. And at that point, I just fell out of my chair. That is not true. That is factually inaccurate, in my opinion. That this $500,000 limit and deferred stock is some kind of restriction on what they do. It's deferred stock, Bill. It's not restricted. You can get as much stock as you want. As soon as you pay back the government, you can cash out of that. That's one. Second, you can, sorry to get technical, but reset the strike price. This is something you and your viewers, you need to figure this one out. Just look for these words, okay? Follow them through the press. When you get into trouble, when your company goes down and you have massive amounts of stock options that aren't worth much anymore because the stock price goes down, you say, oh, well, we're going to reset our option prices. And basically it means that at the end of the day, these people are going to walk away with tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars paid for by basically an insurance policy that you and I are providing. Think of it like this. Our taxpayer money is insuring their bonuses. We're making sure their companies, their banks survive, and eventually, of course, the economy will turn around. Things will get better. The banks will be worth a lot of money, and they will cash out. And we will be paying higher taxes. We and our children will be paying higher taxes so those people could have those bonuses. That's not fair. It's not acceptable. It's not even good economics.
Are we chumps?
We'll find out. Yes, we may be, okay? It depends on how we play this politically. It depends on what our political system does. It depends, I think, on the level of reaction. The financial system is playing us for chumps, okay? The bankers think we're chumps. We'll find out. We have leadership that can handle this. We'll find out what they do.
There was a moment in the hearings this week when Senator Bernie Sanders, the independent senator from Vermont, almost lost his cool. Watch this.
In 2006 and 2007, Lloyd Blankfein, the CEO of Goldman Sachs, was the highest paid executive on Wall Street, making over $125 million in total compensation. Due to its risky investments, Goldman Sachs now has over $168 billion in total outstanding debt. It's laid off over 10% of its workforce. Late last year, the financial situation at Goldman was so dire that the taxpayers of this country provided Goldman Sachs with a $10 billion bailout. Very simple question that I think the American people want to know. Yes or no, should Mr. Blankfein be fired from his job and new leadership be brought in?
Senator, that's a judgment his board of directors have to make. I want to say one thing which is very important. Everything we do going forward has to be judged against the impact we're going to have on the American people and the prospects for recovery. And every dollar we spend has to be measured against the benefits we bring in terms
of... Mr. Secretary, you're not answering my question. You have a person who made hundreds of millions for himself as he led his institution and helped cause a great financial crisis. We have put, as taxpayers, $10 billion to bail him out, and we have no say about whether or not he should stay on the job?
No, I didn't say that. I think there will be circumstances, as there have been already, where the government intervention will have to come with very tough conditions, including changes in management leadership of institutions. And where we believe that makes sense, we will do that.
Geithner says that's something his board of directors, the board of Goldman Sachs, will have to decide. But aren't we all ipso facto stockholders now?
We should certainly have a big say over critical matters like this, like the CEO, because two things. First of all, it's our money that kept these banks in business. Not just the Treasury recapitalization money, that's relatively small. It's the financial support provided by the Federal Reserve. Make no mistake about it, if the Federal Reserve hadn't stepped in late September in dramatic fashion to prop up organizations like Goldman Sachs, they would be out of business.